Has your interest piqued or been renewed in sewing fashions? Reality TV shows featuring sewing challenges have brought the art of sewing to the limelight. We all can enjoy the creative process. I've invited Linda Lee of the Sewing Workshop to update us on runway-style sewing. Linda, when we first learned to sew, raw edges, which are now on runways, were a taboo.
We're seeing raw edges every place, from high-end to medium-priced garments. And we're going to show it today on a wrap skirt. You can buy a lot of wrap skirt patterns and use bits and pieces from your sewing stash, whether it's quilt fabrics and ribbons and so forth, to embellish the bottom of a skirt and the waistband as well.
Runway finishes for cool edges. That's what's coming up next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. And amazing designs and Class A needles.
We're going to start this segment of New Take on Raw Edges, taking a close-up look, Linda, at your wrap skirt. Raw edges are the showcase.
That's right. And all you need are some really interesting scraps of cotton fabric pieced together, and some twill tape or ribbon or bits of fabric to create a border.
And raw is in.
Raw is in.
For the waistline, this is twill tape again, a little wider.
Yes, and then laid down the center is another piece of ribbon, or you can also create a little tube of fabric that can be laid on the middle of that, but you can create your own look.
And here you have raw edges along the inside, simple sewing.
Simple sewing and simple fit.
Yes, best part.
Skirt. Yeah,
best part. So
right.
This piece of fabric is like the hemline of your skirt.
Exactly. So you just piece together some bits of fabric, random widths and so forth, using little small 1/4 inch seams. And then when you determine how wide this is, then you will lay that down on the edge of the fabric and mark with your chalk line.
And we have marked that already.
Yes, where you're going to line that up later.
Now the white that you see fused into place is the paperback fusible web that's cut into 3/8, 1/4 inch wide strip. A little narrower probably would be easier.
That's right. And the paper comes off.
Sure.
And what's left is this little line of tacky glue, so that you can just position this along your line and then fuse that down.
Now wrap skirts have a slight curve to them, but you can kind of mold it. They're very subtle. It's very subtle.
You can mold it.
Then one more pinning technique using that paperback fusible web.
Yes, so then if you want to put something on top of the edge, you can use some ribbon, and you want to lay down this same fusible web tape as well, so that you'll get a nice, clean ability to baste that down. It's a new form of basting. So fuse that down also using your iron. And then you can choose some kind of interesting stitch. I actually like a zigzag stitch. It's one of my favorites.
It's basic.
It's basic, and contrasting thread.
Sure.
And use a little zigzag or a straight stitch or any combination of other interesting
And then you've
stitches.
also zigzagged right in the middle. If we take a close-up look at down in the pieced area, there's zigzag right in the middle too. So you have it there as a decorative, and you can just let it ravel.
You can just let it ravel, and you can either trim the whiskers later or not.
You know, it goes against what we learned, but it's kind of a fun treatment. Learned years ago. Let me add that. As my sons would say, old school, new school.
That's right.
Now the waistband is the twill tape, and here we have, it could be grosgrain ribbon, and just add some ribbon, or using a bias tape maker, create some trim, stitch this down so that you have a little bit more trim and support to the waistline.
Yeah, I love the way you can alter just the look of something very plain that you might have with just a little spark of something.
And then you can fringe the fabric.
Yes, and this, of course, was done because I made a mistake. In sewing the buttonhole near the bottom of this garment, caught the bottom of this garment and blemished it while taking out the buttonhole. So I laid in another strip of the same fabric, sewed it on the top and the bottom, and then was able to fringe away the threads to form this.
And it really enhances, your mistake enhanced that look.
You never know.
Yeah, that's right. We're on raw edges, a new take on raw edges, and instead of laying the fabric on along the lengthwise grain, you had the selvage going
Yeah, sometimes I'll buy a piece of fabric just because I like the selvage.
and now the underlay is ribbon.
Yes, so you don't have to do any math, you just lay them together.
And this is placed underneath, top stitched, and what a beautiful accent around the lower edges. So, for some fantastic runway finishes, use raw edges, selvages, and fringe the fabric for a new look in couture wear. Sewing knits, the topic might jog memories of making a knit t-shirt with ribbing, while not so with runway finishes for cool edges. Linda's top, called the Tea Garden Tee, features a unique hem that can be applied to any knit pattern. It's a petticoat edge showcasing an underlay of another knit fabric. Well, you can have raw edges for woven fabrics and for knits. Great design, great combination of knit fabrics, Linda.
Thank you. The stripe and the floral. So you've finished the actual garment and then laid in a couple of strips of another stripe knit to give it a little petticoat edge.
So we're going to use paperback fusible web strips again.
Oh yes, on the wrong side of the fabric,
Okay.
on the very edge, and after that is untaped, unpapered.
Pull it off. and
Pull it off.
Press it up.
Press it up, and we're showing it here pressed up. Then we use it again. And this time I like to cut it a little bit narrower because you
Okay.
don't want so much. And you've cut some kind of striped fabric or decorative fabric in some way. This happens to be a two-sided knit, one wide
Nice.
stripe and one narrow. So after this particular piece of paper is removed, then you're on the wrong side.
And you press.
And you press that as well. Yeah, that just a light fuse will do it.
And what's interesting is that it has give. Even though that it has the web in it, it has give.
Well, that's right. So now you want to turn it over to the right side where you see the other stripe, and you see that this is a finished edge. And now you have your stripe, and you can run some kind of a decorative stitch, in this case the zigzag
Yes.
stitch.
It's really a simple, maybe a 3 width, 2.5 width, same length, and the hem is done.
It's done.
Oh, I like it.
One raw edge and one finished edge.
Now you can have 3 raw edges, and this great garment that you have next to you, really kind of eclectic look.
Very eclectic look. Well, this has a stacked edge in that there is a strip of fabric on the bottom that has been folded in half and edge stitched so that you have 3 raw edges.
And we can show our audience how this is done.
Yes, this time I've cut this on the bias, not because it needs to be on the bias, but because I wanted the diagonal line of the stripe. And then you would fold that strip in half, and after you've removed the paper,
There we go.
yep, you fuse this down, lining up those raw edges. Just a little light fuse again to hold it in place because those knits tend to creep a little bit. And then you can use your edge stitching foot to get a nice, clean, even edge of stitching next to that fold that opens up all of these raw edges to be exposed.
Gives weight to the bottom of lightweight knits. The edges, in this instance, will not ravel.
No, knits don't ravel.
And what a wonderful finish and attractive finish as well. Finish an edge of a jacket with brushed bias fringe. It's a trademark cool edge finish. Handkerchief linen was the fabric, and it's ideal for a loose-fitting jacket and this specialty finish technique. Use Linda's Valencia jacket pattern or select a pattern from your sewing stash. No matter your choice, you'll be pleased with this easy yet dramatic fabric edge. When you take a close look at this fabric, I love this color, the characteristics of handkerchief linen is it wrinkles.
Oh, it wrinkles
but it's drapes.
wonderfully.
Yeah, it's
You have to like wrinkles.
and it drapes beautifully, and this edge is added on, and you can see fringe. That's what this segment of our TV series is all about. And then inside,
Yes, the
lovely.
same little fringe edge is just applied to the surface of a garment rather than on the edge.
Very attractive. And straight stitching,
Straight stitching, it seems to be my
Yeah.
favorite stitch.
well, that's okay. So this is a loose-fitting jacket, so Linda didn't do any trimming of seam allowances on the outer edge.
No, if you were using a similar technique on a more fitted garment, you would probably want to calculate removing the hems and the seam allowances.
But to do this, you're going to cut bias strips that are
2 inches. 2 inches is what I used, and you want 2 of them for every edge, so that you sandwich the garment between the 2 edges of this bias. And then along those raw edges, you will stitch approximately a ½ inch
and then you can
through all 3 layers.
so then you can do some pressing.
Then you can do some pressing, yes. And you want to press it away from the garment. There we go, kind of against the ridge, as I call it. Something like that.
Top pressing.
Yeah,
right.
top pressing. And then, because it's bias, it'll get a little bit thick and thin.
Sure.
And it might be that you want to do a little trimming of, let's say, a ½ inch, just to even it up a little bit.
And then one more stitch.
One more stitch. Then you're going to stitch a ½ inch from your little folded edge. And what you're really doing is encasing the raw edge on the inside, which I'm not quite sure why we do, because we're leaving the raw edges on the outside, but you know,
It's your prerogative.
It's a designer
Yes,
thing.
there you go.
Right. But then this is a wonderful tool. This chenille
Brush.
Yes. So because it's bias, it technically doesn't really ravel, but you want to brush and rough up these edges. And I love what this tool does because it has this brittle bristle
Sure.
to it. You could use a nail brush, but this chenille edge, just go at it, you know? This is a time to get rid of a little...
Frustrations.
Right, exactly. Both sides.
And while Linda's getting rid of some of her frustrations, I'll show you this corner because you'd add the fringe to one edge and then add it to the other, so you don't have to worry about mitered corners. It's really a nice treatment.
It's so simple, so simple.
But on the dress form, you have another edge with just the raw edge of the fabric.
Yes, this happens to be a loosely woven, hand-woven like fabric. So, of course, it's going to ravel very easily. And to prevent it from raveling too much, there is some stitching here that is like a utility stitch. So it's a back and forth kind of triple stitch that reinforces this edge right through here. And then you can take that brush again and remove some of the threads, or you can almost just pull them away, really.
And then we have 2 other quick ways of doing some finishes, and we have either grosgrain or Petersham.
Petersham is a high grade of grosgrain, and you can put this either on the wrong side or the right side of the fabric, but it prevents the raveling from going too far and gives you a nice finish as well.
And this one is just another option, bias strips sandwiched on both sides, stitched down the middle, and
Brushed, brushed, brushed.
so raw edges is the theme of this 2-part series, and a great way to have a couture finish. Cool edges are not limited to fashion. Extend the runway influence to home decor. With ribbon or yarn, we'll show you how to create bold fringe that effortlessly fits into a seam. Use whatever you may have in your sewing stash to stitch this dramatic accent. Well, Linda has made beautiful pillows for us to showcase this unique finish technique, but Linda, it's not limited just to home decor.
No, I don't think it is. I think it would be great on the bottom of a really beautiful, elegant skirt in black to maybe the bottom of a sleeve.
It's fun, and here we have some kind of free-form fringe made with ribbon, which Linda's going to share with you, and then I'm going to show you how to combine yarns and trim into this type of fringe, which may cost a lot of money if you purchased it.
Well, that's the trouble, you know. You can't either afford them or find the colors that you want. But now when you can buy other materials or use things in your own stash, then you have the colors that you need. So I start with a piece of grosgrain ribbon or some kind of ribbon that is 1 inch wide. There's a reason for that, which you'll find out in a minute. And then I use something as simple as rayon seam tape. about a ½ an inch wide, but you can use any kind of ribbon, but I like this because it's very pliable. So my process is to put the ribbon on top of the grosgrain. My grosgrain is my base, and I'm going to stitch down the center of that. And as I stitch through the center of the ribbon, I am taking the seams tape and I'm folding it at just random widths, kind of spanning that 1 inch grosgrain. And I'm twisting it and I'm shoving it, and I'm not really being all that really precise about it. Twists and turns and long and short and so forth. So you keep coming down the center of the ribbon until you achieve the length that you need to go around the pillow or an edge. It's as simple as that.
And you have some samples of various options. You can trim edges, you can
leave them looped, you can have them long and short and really random lengths, or you can go ahead and give it a little trim and cut all of the loops so that you have just these little fun little fringed raw edges to the ends.
Then Linda chose this 1 inch wide ribbon or trim, whatever you'd like to work with, and you fold that in half. And that becomes the seam allowance.
And I call that the flange.
The flange.
That fits into an edge of a pillow.
So here we have a sample of using a ½ inch seam allowance. You can see the teal color fabric, and in between is the flange, and then here's the trim. This is a little bit different trim that we have created, but then with a ½ inch seam allowance you stitch along the edge. Now Linda,
I use a zipper foot there because you want to get really close to that fringe so that none of that flange is exposed when you turn it to the outside.
So that the grosgrain ribbon or whatever base you used is in between, sandwiched in between,
Right.
and it easily goes in. Now there's another option that you could work with, and that's to make the very fancy, eclectic.
It's sometimes called moss fringe. That's an interior decorating term for moss fringe. And here you can have really a lot of fun with the different materials that you use, from yarns to threads, decorative threads, and so on. Anything you want.
And if you are a collector of, as Linda said, yarns, trims, here we have 4 very different mediums that we put together. This is an old-fashioned lace maker. It's wrapped around, we put 4 of these different textures together and just wrap them around the edges.
Now the width of that determines how long this fringe is going to be. And what you're dealing with is something that is twice as wide as the finished fringe.
Now I'm going to insert this underneath the presser foot, but not just so, at least at this moment.
Right.
Cut a 1 inch sheer fabric.
You could use something like organza.
Something lightweight.
The idea of putting it on top is that as you sew, then the toe of the presser foot doesn't catch in the loops of the yarns and the threads.
And then you can kind of remove this from the back and start to wind more. I'm just going to do a short amount for you. You'd be doing a little bit more than this.
You want to practice a little bit because you need to understand the density as it gets doubled after you take it off.
And I'll take this off and show you that. Here we go. Here's some fringe.
That's pretty good looking.
Made in really a very short order of time. So we could cut the loops if we wanted to, or just leave it alone.
I've even seen it when you've tied the ends of some of the ribbons into little knots as well, and just intersperse them as well.
Sure, so you can add, well, this is real free form. We're talking about raw edges in this program.
I think you should wear it as a necklace with the shirt that you have on.
Well, that's an idea, Linda. That's an idea.
Great colors.
So here we have some fringe that we could put into pillows, into possibly evening wear, and it's a great runway idea for home decor or fashion. And Linda, thank you for being our guest on Sewing with Nancy.
You're welcome. It was really fun.
It was great to learn and to work with high fashion fabrics, learn the finishing touches, and I know that you'll appreciate that too. Start garment sewing again. Quilts are as unique as the people they cover. Baby quilts, king-size quilts, grandma-made quilts, and quilts made with love are just a few of the categories. My Nancy's Corner guest, who is with me today, Karen Demery, represents an organization that fits under the Quilts Made with Love category. The organization is Quilts of Valor. The goal is to give a quilt made with love to all the wounded and injured service members. Karen, welcome to Nancy's Corner, part of Sewing with Nancy, and what an admirable way to sew and quilt.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to recognize all of the volunteers with Quilts of Valor.
And you're just one of many.
Oh yes, there's thousands out there.
And you make beautiful quilts, and they're of a rather significant size.
Yes, the minimum size that we accept is 55 by 65. Some people make them larger. They can't be any smaller than that because after all they are for adults.
Yes, and up to 72 by, I'm checking my notes, 87 inches.
Right, yeah, that will keep it small enough so that our volunteer long arm quilters who also have a business that they're running will have time to quilt them and are willing to do that for us.
Now you bring up a good point because people donate their time to create quilt tops. It could be an organization or an individual.
Correct. Yeah, there are many local groups that get together for a sewing bee, but there are lots of individuals sitting at home that use this as an outlet and a way to recognize our service members.
Now these quilts, really, when you showed them to me, they're very beautiful.
Yeah, we're very proud of the ones that we create.
And it's important that if you're thinking of making a quilt, that you make it with the best possible fabric, and it's called Quilts of Valor, and so you would like your quilt to stand up to that category.
Right, yeah, we would like you to think of it as if that was your husband or child or grandchild that you're presenting it to because of their service to our country, to make it that type of quilt, using the best fabric that you can afford.
Sure.
And if you can't afford it, there are ways to contact people that will help you. But we want quality quilts that are well-pieced that will last a lifetime.
Now Karen, we mentioned the thousands of volunteers. To date, you checked before we taped how many quilts have been presented.
There was over 31,032 quilts were what were on the website this morning, and those are the ones that have been actually presented to people, that there are probably thousands more waiting for the correct presentation.
It's a humbling number. Wish it wasn't so high.
Right. We wish that we could go away, as a matter of fact.
Yes, absolutely. Now the quilts, when they're presented, are presented in a bag, a pillowcase.
Right. This is a regular standard pillowcase that was made with the same type of fabrics that are in the quilts.
Sure. And then the quilt is...
And the quilts are either machine quilted or they can be hand quilted, but not more than about 4 inches apart.
So the stitching has to be close together because of the laundering and...
Correct. And then this is another type of presentation case that's more like a big envelope.
Sure, it has a...
And so it has a pocket on it, which keeps the quilt compact until it can be presented to the service member.
Now, the quilts that we are showing are all in the red, white, and blue, but not all of them that you have seen or worked on have been in those color combinations.
Right. No, they can be in any color combination, realizing that less than 10% of the service members are female, so we try not to use all of our florals and so on that most of us quilters just love.
Sure.
But we've seen them in camouflage and greens and browns and autumn colors, and they're very striking quilts.
And we have the presentation of the quilts, we have a lot of stars, but that's not, you're not limited to that design.
No, no, it can be any design that you wish. The ones that we have here are sampler quilts where there's a number of different patterns used, or it can be a repeating pattern as long as it's well made.
Now, Quilts of Valor has a wonderful mission statement.
Right, our mission statement is that the Quilts of Valor Foundation is to cover all those service members and veterans touched by war with quilts called Quilts of Valor, or QOVS. This foundation is not about politics, it's about people.
Isn't that a touching and a very worthy mission statement? There's a website that you can go to, and if you go to sewingwithnancy.com, as with all our Nancy's Corner guests, and click on Nancy's Corner, under that area you will find the Quilts of Valor and Karen's name, and a little brief description of today's presentation, then a link so that you can go to the Quilts of Valor site and find the instructions on where to send the quilts or the sizes to make, so that it's really easy to work with.
Right, and there are also patterns there. But this is a great way to thank all of those volunteers that have helped us and the other organizations that also do similar functions.
Well, Karen, thank you for being our guest on Sewing with Nancy.
Thank you.
It's an admirable project, and thank you for joining us on Sewing with Nancy for this two-part series. A special thanks to Linda Lee as well, our guest during the sewing segments. Bye for now.
Nancy and Linda Lee have written a fully illustrated book entitled Runway Finishes for Cool Edges that includes all the information from this two-part series. It's $14.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2421. Order item number BK2421, Runway Finishes for Cool Edges, credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at sewingwithnancy.com for more information on this program. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Classe Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Rowenta. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.